I'm very happy to be here among the eminent panelists who are the learned ones. I also have some of my mentors sitting with me today to discuss what we call as one of the very relevant topics in these times, driving growth through innovation and partnerships. So last week I was in the Global Business Summit hosted by Economic Times in Delhi. And I sat through an interesting interview that was of Stephen Schwarzman, who's the co-founder and chairman of Blackstone, okay, one of the world's largest investor. Times senior journalist was interviewing him, and this was his first question, that what was Stephen's take on India Inc. and its growth. And Stephen says, for some reason we, which means the global investor, private equity investors, were made to believe that India is poised for a 9% growth. Now here, today, we look at a reality of a 4.5% growth, right? And that got the whole audience kind of silence. A lot of real estate magnates sitting in the room must have kind of sweating that, this is what we hear from the largest investor. So then after a couple of minutes, there was a second question that what is his outlook for the future investments in India? And Stephen says, we have invested about 15 billion US dollars in the since 2006. And in the next 3 to 5 years, we would like to double it. Now, this is an interesting paradox of how global is looking at India Inc. and our growth. Imagine if we were at 7.5%, what would have been the investor stake? Now, with that, not wasting much time, let me get into taking introductory views from the eminent panel on the theme of today, which is driving growth through innovation and partnerships. To start with, Mr. Devesh, I would like to request you. You've been an entrepreneur. Also, interestingly, the Lockheed Martin awardee on innovations, I think almost a decade and a half back. So with your technology product, I think it was in the aerospace industry, right? The power over Ethernet. So I would like to hear from you, your take on innovation and how do we manage sustained growth using innovation in these times?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
So I'm saying, based on your experience, and you're also been an awardee, Lockheed Martin awardee for as an innovator for your product. So POE, right? We call power over Ethernet. So I want to understand your take on how do we kind of sustain growth in these times and how innovation and partnership can become the game changers.
In the global economy today, we have got sort of two ways to approach things. And let's face it, if you look at the clothes that you're wearing, if you're just wearing a standard white shirt, you'll just go to a store and you'll say, yeah, I get the same terracotta shirt. That store next to you is selling it for 500 rupees. You're asking me 600, and then you'll go to the store at 500 and say the store next to you is doing it at 400. So it just becomes a sort of pricing game. But stick a label on that, that says DKNY, or it says FCUK, or it says, I don't know, who's Sabyasachi or something like that. And all of a sudden, that fellow is going to say, you want this shirt for 20,000, take it, otherwise I've got another 10 people behind you. And at that point, you're no longer buying a product, but you're buying somebody's mind, somebody's innovation. And ultimately, it is innovation that is required to keep ahead of competition. And unlike some fallacies that may be in our mind, innovation doesn't have to be something like a big bang. Innovation is very, very small, incremental approaches also. In manufacturing, we have this concept of the Japanese quality techniques, which includes the word Kaizen. And Kaizen basically is a better way of doing it. Just every day, it could be something. I need to put a shaft inside a bush. Now there are two ways. Either I can heat the bush, or I can chill the shaft, or I can use brute force. So somebody came up with a method of doing 1, 2, 3, and it improves the production process. It reduces my cost and everything. In the chamber, it's the same way. If you see here in front, we have got some of the senior most people from some of the biggest companies in Bangalore, in Karnataka, and maybe even in India. And they share and they continue to share not just with the members of the chamber, but their best practices, what they have spent time innovating. Similarly, the chamber, as I pointed out in my presidential address, we have the Emerging Stars Award where we are focusing on startups. We have innovation awards, but we said let us focus on social innovation. Innovation that can benefit society. We all, for instance, complain about traffic. Who have we seen that has developed an app that can do something about the traffic? I think that is the biggest innovation still waiting to happen. Is there some way we can find a way to beat the traffic? And I'm not talking Google Maps.
Thank you, Devesh. Shekhar, you've been, advising various, sectors, corporates, industrialists in your career over last 2.5 decades. Largely dealt with the regulators, policymakers. Now, what's your take on growth partnerships and the innovations, and how entrepreneurs should look at leveraging them in these times?
Innovation, it's not something new, but it's there in every corporate organization for ages. But thanks to technology, this innovation concept has come up. It has got everybody's attention. If you go back to manufacturing organizations, very old, they used to have a continuous R&D department. Nobody called them as innovators, but R&D department was meant for only for improving the product, process, quality, because it's part and parcel of every manufacturing organization 20 years back. When the industry moved from manufacturing into that technology, IT, and then IT moved to technology, today nothing is called IT, everything is technology. The innovation has got everybody's attention. The reason is very simple. People wanted the service at the doorstep. Customers wanted everything at fast, at a better quality, at the doorstep. So therefore, you need to satisfy the aspirations of the customers and the community. And how to satisfy the aspiration of the community of large only through a better thinking and process. That leads to innovation. Any organization for that matter, whether it is a service organization like us, or whether it is a technology organization like Swiggy, Zomato, Infosys, or manufacturing organizations, innovation has become part of the process. And without innovation, you can't do anything. Innovation does not mean that you need to find out something, a rocket science. Just a question of how you improve yourself in services. To give a simple example, 10 years back, the organization model was asset heavy. Today, everybody is turning towards asset light model. The balance sheet is very, very light. They don't want very heavy assets, everything in asset light model. Can you ever imagine a biggest hotel company does not own any hotel? Can you ever imagine a biggest restaurant does not own any restaurants? So people trying moving towards asset light model rather than an asset heavy model just 10 years back. And one of the ways to look at the asset light model is innovation. And even as services. Let me take my friend is sitting opposite me, Badrinath. 10 years back, have you ever imagined that returns will be filing online on the tax returns, be it GST, be it sales tax, be it income tax returns? Would not have imagined it. Today, everything is going through online. And the government itself is doing it, they say we'll do a faceless assessment. Probably you may have some here and there some challenges, but the way it is going the next 3 years, you don't need human bodies to do the assessment, maybe robots will be there. So in fact, one of the comments made by one of the captain of the industry in Bangalore is that Shekhar, over a period of time, you will have a robots to do all the jobs which a human being is doing without where the process is involved. Where the intelligence is involved, robots may not be required. That's what he said 10 years back. Now, with where the intelligence and artificial intelligence is coming up. So, the innovation is inevitable. And I see more innovation in the young guys like these people. In fact, I was speaking with some of the startup guys, they said, Shekhar, the guy with 23 to 27, they come out with better ideas. And they need somebody like you guys to come with the experience of mentor. So they assume that after 45 our brain will not work, we will not be able to innovate anything. Our mind is only to support them. It's a fair assessment of them. But having said that, the young mind has got more energy for innovation. What is innovation? Partnerships. You innovate, but there is always a challenge to take it to the market. There is always to do a commercialization. There is always a challenge to reach out to the customers. And partnerships helps us. 10 years back, any organization which when I started my career in 35 years, 10 years back the partnerships are not considered as a viable option in any of the organizations. No, we will not partner, we will do on our own. Because there is always a branding issue, there is a quality issue. Today people prefer partnerships. People more aligned to the partnership because your ability to reach the customers is very high. And to put it in a short, innovation, partnerships, both are inevitable. And probably in the next 10 years, today what I am saying, the 4D revolution, or next will be a 5D, 6D, the next 10 to 15 years, innovation, partnerships are inevitable. And the companies, the professionals who embrace that culture will be successful. Professionals and cultures who do not embrace that culture will be left behind. And I keep repeating to you, Bharat, you work with me, so I know that. Professionals keep running not for winning, for staying in the same place. So you better embrace the innovation, you better embrace the partnership, otherwise you'll be left behind.
Thank you. That is a very interesting perspective. In fact, what Mr. Shekhar touched on was a bot in the human scenario. So taking that, Augustus, I want to maybe request you, you lead a very critical talent function for the largest IT companies in the world. What's your perspective, more from an eye of a lens of a talent leader for innovations and the partnerships driving growth?
Sure, thank you. The first thing I want to say here is a bit shocking to the students. If you are looking for a job, remember one thing, that your college degree is not going to land you a job. Because in the future of work, it is skills. Skills is the new currency, right? So with that, I have to tell you this. Apart from a college degree, corporations outside are looking for people who come with something called a purpose. Okay? A purpose to break across traditional barriers, okay, and to innovate. Now, how do you innovate? Okay, when we say partnerships, I'm going to change it slightly, and I'm going to call it collaboration. Okay, unless you come to a table or a garage and collaborate, you don't get innovation. Okay, so as far as possible, you've got to get people together. You've got to have diversified minds. You've got to have an inclusive mindset. Okay, and that by itself would drive innovation. Then comes what is in store for me. I'll give you a quick analogy, which is a true story of this lady. Her name, let's call her Rukmani. Okay, Rukmani was about 26 years old. She joined this very good MNC from campus, and bright mind. She was doing extremely well, got many awards, went abroad, clients loved her, and things like that. Until one fine morning, she gets a call from her manager and says that, Rukmani, can you come and have a chat with me? So Rukmani is a bit nervous, because first thing in the morning, if a manager calls you, goes and asks him, yes, what is it? And they have a cup of coffee, and then he says, Rukmini, you're a great performer, you came from this campus, you got us new business, rewards and new clients and things like that. But I have to tell you that our organization has shifted its strategy 3 times in 2 years. And therefore, the skills that you bring to the table are going to be relevant in the next 3 months. So, if you do not scale up to change your skill set from a half stack to a full stack, then I'm sorry, you don't have a job. So what does Rukmani do? She is very dumbfounded, she's surprised and shocked, nobody spoke to her. She goes and then does various programs. She also invests in herself, does various certifications. She gets her eminence improved on social media, and at the end of 3 months, she has completed various programs and then she is relevant. And then her manager says, okay, we can give you this job, but Rukmani says, no. I'm not really interested in this particular job because I found I had purpose in life, because I today am committed to add to the environment something that I can do. Like for example, I'm very concerned about pollution. So I would like to work for this airline company, cut code in Java, and enable them to have a lower carbon footprint. So I'm going to do that work for 3 days, and I'm going to come and work for you for the other 2 days. So what happened is that the workforce transitioned from there into a gig economy, or what you call a gig workforce, from a single stack set of skills to a full stack set of skills. And what did she do? She went and encashed what she had invested in her, because now she had social eminence and people were willing to pay for her. Okay, so therefore I want to conclude that while a college degree is important, what is relevant in a job is skills that are current and that are futuristic. Thank you.
Interesting. This is, I think we touched upon one of the topics which are very relevant to the crowd mostly. Now, Badri, you had a very interesting experience, right? You are known GST expert, trained, a lot of even the policy makers on this side. Devesh was saying. So you looked at companies from a very different lens. When GST came, it was a disruption. And a lot of them made it very relevant, and a lot of value had happened. And if you look at from a logistics, time that we nationally save, you see people responding it to entrepreneurs positively responding and making good out of it. So what are your takes or experiences watching those entrepreneurs making good use of or innovating themselves to adapt and make good use of some of these regulatory changes?
There are 2-3 words, which each one of them you mentioned are very critical, which Augustus was mentioning as collaboration, right? Very important. Because when we talk about, growth, of course, all of us want to grow. There is no doubt in that. Through innovation and partnerships or collaboration. I'll just take a minute before I answer your question on that. There is this hair in the tortoise story. I think it will take about 10 minutes to say that, so I'll not tell you that. You should read about how that hare and tortoise story is told today versus how it was 25 years ago. It kind of tells you how important partnering and collaborating is. The new version of the hare and the tortoise story. I'm sure Google will give it to you, but I'll not take that time because it will take me 10 minutes on that. Coming back to your question and what Mr. Shekhar also was mentioning, innovation is something which is inevitable. It is unknowingly we are a part of many innovations, but innovation is not as important as adapting it is. You think WhatsApp was an innovation? Yes, but it wouldn't have meant anything if it was not adopted the way it is today. Okay? In collaborating and partnering for that matter. I don't know how many of you see this, how many of you use this Microsoft. Microsoft, there is something called Office 365. Once you just enter into that, there are so many other applications in that. Not everything is owned by Microsoft. Not all of them are not owned by Microsoft, right? So there are few things which we can use within that. This makes the aspect of partnering with somebody or collaborating with somebody and being able to adopt. Adapting is the most important thing. Adapting it is the most important. There are so many innovations which have not seen the light of the day simply because it was not adopted. Simply because it was not adopted. And in any of these innovations, the way I would look at it is mindset has to be there to try it, to adapt it. On NDTV, there are these competitions which go on, where I think it is some 4 or 5 years old when I saw it. There is a competition where each one of them is given exactly 2 minutes to sell a business idea. One of them came up with a business idea, which was what a chemical composition, which if mixed with tar while laying these roads, it will give it that flexibility and extra life. It was innovative, without doubt, but it never saw the light of the day. Nobody was willing to invest in that man who gave that idea. The feedback that he was given was, maybe your invention is very nice, but I don't see the adoption of it. There is so much of resistance that we have to adopt new things today, which kills innovation. I think we should get over that. Mr. Shekhar was mentioning, saying, on the tax side, there is so many things which we are going to see in the near future as far as interaction with the tax office, maybe a income tax or a GST or a customs or whoever that is, which is called faceless. That is the word which Shekhar sir mentioned. Faceless means what? Today, if something is to happen at the tax office, I have to go visit them, I have to speak to them, I have to explain to them in person. That is becoming faceless. I think income tax has already implemented it. Other laws are behind. But yes, we should be willing to adopt to it. Till we do that, there is no way that things are going to change. Just adding to what he was mentioning on the tax office side. Today, there are so many filings that happen. Everything happens in bill. When there are submissions which happen to any of these tax office side or any of the legal side for that matter, any court or quasi courts, etc. There is so much of paper that goes. And trust me, everything that gets filed has to be filed in 5 or 6 months. Depends. Situation to situation. But how many times does even one paper get seen? Today there is innovation. There is already innovation. We don't need to innovate them, which is video conferencing or maybe just project it like this. Why waste paper by filing 5 or 7 copies? But yes, we have not adopted it. I think these are the changes which we have to really push, and we should show adoption as much possible so that even from the government side there is a force to adopt. Today, WhatsApp is part of life. I think all of us will agree to it, right? Tax offices also have started communicating on WhatsApp because it is not possible to probably communicate without a WhatsApp, right? So even tax offices are forced to adopt. So look at something like that. Maybe a faceless assessment, as he said. Yes, success of that depends on how flexible we are, how adaptive we are, and how we are able to support them. More than I think there are enough and more innovations. I think there are enough and more ideas. I think we should, goes back, I'll just take a minute more. I don't know, half of you would have been born also. In the early 1980s, there was only one channel on TV which was called Doordarshan. There used to be a serial which was called Star Trek. I don't know how many of you remember that also. Star Trek, right? So half the 3/4 of them would have been born also. This was in the early 80s. It was about a space, something related to space, going to moon, Mars, etc. Those days, 1980s. I remember 3 things in that. 1980s, trust me, 1980s, early 1980s. There was a lookalike of a mobile phone in that. There was a lookalike of a small, very small computer, which we call as a palm top or a laptop today, right? I'm wearing a watch. There is one person, that Captain Spock or something like that. He presses something. Okay, he knows it. Right? If I press something on my watch, I disappear here and appear somewhere else. That one thing has not yet come true. Yeah, that part of it has not come true. While there are enough ideas, I think we need a very conducive climate and atmosphere to kind of convert innovations into dreams or thoughts into reality. And yes, even more the stronger will that is required is to adapt, because we are all resistant to change. We are all very resistant to change. Today, if I have to speak about GST, I think from a legislation point of view, it is a fabulous one. It's a fabulous one. I'm not trying to sell that law to any of you because I do that. No, not really. It's a fantastic piece of legislation. But where we have failed is in really adapting it. There will be challenges. I mean, it's one of the biggest things that has happened in the last 100 years in the independent India. It is the biggest thing to have happened in independence. Don't ever think that it will be flawless. Of course there will be. But are we willing to, go through that extra mile to let that, to beat that challenge and see how it kind of helps us? That is where I think the challenge is too.
Interesting, Badri. Okay, so now let's dwell on the second important aspects of further collaboration that you talked about partnerships. See, recently, Modi launched his vision for growth for India. He said, collaborate to create. And further, he collaborate to create. And then he said, okay, create to sustain. So collaborate to create has become the headlines and the mantra of next, which means he definitely hinted us about, developing very effective partnerships. And they were the days where we looked at alliances and competition. But today is an age where in competition you find alliances. Telecom is a great example. I'm not referring to the cartel, but I'm referring to those infrastructure sharing and all those aspects. So I want to ask both of you your take on how can enterprises today, different sectors today, industries today, can build effective partnerships. Maybe you can share some perspective on that.
Whether it's partnership in business, whether partnership in life, if this has to be successful, there's only one mantra. Identify a right partner, accept the partner, and go with the partner. There will always be a challenges in the partnership. During the process, you learn it, you make the changes, adapt yourselves. But very, very important, Bharat, for a partnership, business partnership to be successful. In a business side, every business will look for three. Number one, by aligning my business with other person, whether how much my branding will enhance, how much my branding will suffer. Because branding is very critical. For example, let me talk from BCIC. If tomorrow be a program with somebody else, the first thing that me, Devesh and Parashuram will think about is that by working the program, it's a partnership. By going the program with them, by doing a long-term alliance, whether it will enhance the BCIC brand, whether it will bring down the BCIC brand, what is called the brand reputation. That's very important. If the partnership does not lead to my brand enhancement strategy, brand reputation, protect my brand reputation, no. Therefore, the person seeking the alliance, a person who is willing to provide the alliance, should have a solid brand. And they should not have any adverse anything. Number one, the brand conscious. Second, quality conscious. Very important, because the business, what is very important is the delivery. The delivery skills, the delivery mechanism, and the process in which you follow the delivery mechanism is very important. He talked about the Microsoft applications. Not every application developed by Microsoft, developed by a lot of other people. It's not only true to Microsoft, it is true for everybody. In professional life, it is also there. Everybody requirement of the business, a requirement of the community is very large. And I will not be able to do everything by myself. There is always a requirement of working with somebody. Just to give an example, a Flipkart or a Swiggy. If a Flipkart or a Swiggy, they need a product is manufactured by somebody. Flipkart or a Swiggy is only a platform. Somebody has to deliver the product from somewhere to you. If the delivery guy delays it, the image of the delivery guy is not taking a beat, the image of the Flipkart or the Swiggy is taking a beat. So it is naturally important for an organization to make sure that organization with whom I align has got a sufficient infrastructure for delivery. If that sufficient infrastructure for delivery is not there, then alignment is not possible. Therefore, second important critical part is delivery. Third important aspect is people. You can say technology, you can say innovation, you can say hardware. Without people, you cannot do anything. We may have robots, but somebody should operate a robot on the switch. The guy does not put on the switch, the robot will not function. So ultimately, the people is required. How much the organization gives importance to the people. For example, let me give the same Flipkart or a Swiggy or the delivery market maker as an example. If the delivery guy is not ethically correct, is not valuable, his integrity wise is a failure, it impacts the reputation. Therefore, not only the quantity of the talent, but the quality of the talent, how much ethically the organization is done. These three things are very, very critical for the partnership to succeed. And more important, both the organizations should know the place where they want to travel, their destiny, and there should be an open commitment. There may be challenges in reaching the destination, but we need to accept the partnership and take it forward. There are large organizations which are very successful. I can keep on quoting it, but the absolute large are very successful in the partnerships. For example, you know about HP and Deloitte. It's a classic case where last having is a partnership success. There are multiple examples I can give you. Even in professional field, if you go to the lawyers, some of the lawyers they will not say no to any chartered accountant to come with a brief because they know that this guy will not say, not lie. So partnership is important, but partnership will be successful only if these four criteria is met. Otherwise, it will not be successful.
So, Dinesh.
So one is, as you said, this is a, shall we say, like a voluntary partnership. Also, you have what I would call as causal partnerships. Now we've got four people sitting together in the front row who are more busy talking to each other than actually focusing on us. So they are in partnership with each other, keeping each other entertained. Okay, I've been watching a lot of students. Basically, they were listening. So I'll make one dramatic statement. We all have seen, how many people say 3-4 years ago during your ICSE exams or SSLC exams, suddenly power failure, you could not study, you had to study by candlelight. How many people can raise their hands and say that yes, you have experienced major power failure? Yeah? Very good. And you will curse the government, right? Well, see, we were talking studies. You don't have candlelight dinners with your girlfriend over studies. Then you're indulging. Then you're having a very different kind of study. Okay? So, now, if I was to make a statement that it was precisely because of these power cuts, Karnataka is the IT capital of the world, you are going to go, what the heck is this guy talking about? But now I'll take you back, give you a bit of history. Karnataka, rather Bangalore, was the first city in India to have electric streetlights. But by the time of independence, Karnataka was already power deficient. If you see Karnataka, all the power is generated to the north, bulk of industry is in the south. So what would happen? We lost a lot of power, plus Karnataka never got a central power plant, no NTPC power plant. It has very heavy dependence on hydroelectric power. Now we have, in the last 20 years, invested in thermal power. So when the power requirement is most, the water availability is the least. All of that resulted in that heavy industry did not enter Karnataka. You did not see the big steel mills and all that. Instead, what you saw precision industries. You saw the Indian telephone industries. You saw HMT making machine tools. You saw ace designers come in. You started seeing people like Bosch, Mr. Ramesh Saligram is sitting here, who are making high precision machined parts, diesel fuel pumps, etc. So you started seeing an entire generation of companies who are bringing high value addition but not much energy consumption. Now, the operative word goes back to value addition. When I'm doing value addition, it means I've got to start using my mind. That in turn drives what partnerships, it then generates demand for educational institutions, which is why you see so many educational institutions in and around South Karnataka. When Texas Instruments came to India in the early 80s, specifically 1982, looking to where we must invest in India to set up an offshore development center, they were finalized finally on Bombay and Bangalore. And the reason they selected Bangalore, one, of course, our better climate, but most importantly, because of the culture of education and the educated workforce that already existed. That is a partnership caused between industry and educational institutions which resulted in what Bangalore is today. So that's a causal partnership. And today, no other city in Bangalore, or rather in India, can come up as fast as Bangalore. Why does any IT company, technology company, no matter what the cost, they first set up in Bangalore? Because we have an ecosystem. And that ecosystem means we have a whole bunch of organizations, educational institutions, workplaces, companies, employers, providers, everything working in partnership. Now, this is a causal partnership. It need not be a deliberate partnership, but it is a cause and effect partnership, but it is still a collaborative partnership. So, to create ecosystems, you still have to work with partnerships.
Partnerships in ecosystem, beautifully explained. I just extend that to your investors. See, IBM, your company particularly, has been one of, I would say, the pioneers in experimenting with partnerships, and it's grown. Your success has been through, successful partnerships and collaborations, whether it's in telecom or in consulting. So, can you give a little light on what worked well?
Sure, happy to do that. First, position closer home, which is industry academia partnerships. Okay, how many industries are actually partnering with you, St. Francis? It's a question. The other one is how much endowment are you attracting from the industry? Then my other question is, do you have an innovation lab? Are you going out there into the marketplace and saying, asking them, hey, what are your problems? Throw your problems at us. We'll come up with a solution. May not be technology solution. We'll come up with a solution. That is most important, okay, to have a partnership, because just not having a partnership is not enough. But does that partnership add value to your strategy? Okay? So does that add value to your belief system? So, and therefore, like I told you Rukmani's story, she had a belief system, she had a value system to make this world a better place. So she went and did something through the business, through a challenge at her. She's going and finding a solution using her skills. So similarly, it's so important to have the value system resonate with the strategy to make the partnership a success, in addition to what Shekhar had stated earlier. Now, in business, I think we go back about 10 years, okay, or even 15, when the telecom business had opened up in India, and Bharti Airtel was one of the biggest telecom, not the biggest at that time, was a telecom provider. And this was a very unique partnership that IBM did with Bharti, and this was called Business on Demand, or IT on Demand, where we said that we could provide you IT support or IT power just like water or electricity. Okay? You open a tap, you get IT, you use what you want, and then you shut it off. Okay? And then we went into this $1 billion deal with Bharti, where we said we will take care of all your computer IT related challenges. You go and focus on your core. Your core And 4 other IT companies went on and signed bigger deals. And that opened the entire telecom sector hugely. Okay? So partnerships are also about that. Partnerships are very intrinsically built into your business plan.
Epidemic has created also opportunities in terms of companies have to now diversify their supply chain. So that creates a lot of opportunity in this one. So the criticality is that the government regulations have been made smoother to kind of build up or respond to those opportunities. So what's your take or advice to the regulators today? 2 or 3 suggestions that you would like to make that would boost our growth and help our entrepreneurs.
Sure. I'll put it this way, especially the coronavirus part of it. Yesterday I got to one of the tech talks for one of the meeting. I was surprised to see that place. I think almost everybody there have decided to work from home. So virtually, I could see only 2 other people apart from me in the entire open area. I was also told saying this is an opportunity for a lot of companies to test their business continuity. What happens if something like this happens? They're preparing themselves also. So the thought was, let's say the business continuity works very well. The work from home model works very well for a lot of companies than which actually offer to them. Then what happens to the real estate that is there in Bangalore? In this aspect also, innovation is required. Now, real estate, who own this entire real estate, have to think what to do if the work from home models really works really well. Fine, not all industries it works, but yes, they are making it work. They are making it work. The same thing. I think we should use and optimally use technology that is available today. Whether it is us as service providers or, if I'm talking about the regulator perspective, if that technology can be used by us to connect with people wherever they are in this world, why not we use that as far as interaction between the regulator and us is concerned? Today, if maybe Bharat will be able to add to it, if there is some high court that has to appear in tomorrow in Bombay, unfortunately he has to go. He has no options. He cannot sit here and technologically be present there. It is not possible. While we do this in a lot of other work, why not we use it for our interaction with the regulator? Mr. Shekhar mentioned, and it is part of law today. It is called faceless assessments. It started last year. There is a lot of things happening this year also as part of the project. There were a few discussions which happened. Faceless assessments means what? It is basically bringing in anonymity. So if there is my income tax return getting verified by somebody, that somebody does not know that it is mine, and I don't know who that officer is. Right? The expectation is that this will kind of reduce or kill the corruption that is available, corruption that is otherwise prevalent. The belief. Extend this. This is an opportunity to extend. Actually, there is a discussion that we were having recently in the context of COVID-19, what you said. What happened? There was a wrong, finally it turned out to be a false message on the WhatsApp saying your all offices, schools, everything has to be closed down with immediate effect. In fact, that is when Bharat and I spoke whether this event is going to happen today. Okay. So, all said and done. If that happens, what are we going to be facing? Are we prepared for them? A lot of things have to still go on. When there is a strike in India, your necessities, your chemists and druggists are all open. The basic transport will still continue because that's a requirement. Okay? Now, if this is going to hit us in terms of, look, it's going to be a lockdown. The doctor mentioned that lockdown is not going to be possible in India. Hypothetically, if that hits us, Can we even think of what is going to happen? But trust me, it is not going to be as bad as what we've thought. There is enough and more infrastructure and equipment that we have today where probably 75% of the work can still go on. Life is not going to come to a standstill. The technology is going to be put to test. The adaptation of that is going to be put to test for life to go on. I'm going to just probably repeat what I told earlier. Adaptation is the key for anything that we are talking about.
Adaptation is the key, it is.
Yes, it is. Bharat may be able to add to it. Today, it is not only, you would have heard of artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc. I think we've just scratched the surface. But we have tried using that in the knowledge space. Yes or no? We have. And yes, let me close by this comment. It's a very good thing that even the regulators have started using that. Machine learning and artificial intelligence is the way they are identifying who should be verified. And after that, they are using a lot of analytics to deep dive into what really needs to be verified. This is an example of adoption. What I'm trying to say is this should be more. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bhakti. It's very interesting. I think you are very clear and focused on your message and implementation. Is the key, and adaptation is the key. I think that was insightful. So we have come to kind of end of our session. Thanks to the time that we have. Yeah, sure. Some concluding remarks from the panel. Yeah, you can.
Just 30 seconds. I would leave this place without throwing a challenge. And because I've known that, do you know, you all have this, right? What is this? A smartphone, right? And who invented this? Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs is from our generation. We gave you the smartphone. My challenge to you is, what are you going to give the world? And the world is at your feet. You have opportunity. India has the youngest workforce in the world. You have funding like it's been like never before. So the world is at your feet. What are you going to give? That's the challenge I throw to you. Thank you.
Yeah, all yours, world is all yours. I'll wait to see the next generation from the younger crowd. Thank you, gentlemen. In fact, it was a great work. Yeah. Great insights from the panel. We got from the perspective of driving innovation in these times, driving successful partnerships, collaboration, managing talent, looking at a scenario of a hybrid bot and human working environment, and most importantly, adapting to changes. So these are the key messages that I've learned today. And before, while we are concluding, any questions, we could restrict to one or two questions from the audience.